Hey, welcome to the Boostly podcast. This is the podcast that gives hosts the tools, the tactics, and the trainings, and most importantly, the confidence that you can go out there and get more direct bookings. Today, we're going behind the host with a successful and interesting short-term rental host who's actually featuring in Hospitable Hosts too. So if people aren't aware of this, I've got the book holding up if you can see us on the... So we've got... Cale Delaney joining us today. He's one of the hosts within the book, and we're just going to dive into his business. His business is called Mountain to Sea Cabins and Cottages, and we're going to find out what tips we can find from him. So welcome along, Cale. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much, Liam, and it's a pleasure to be here. You, of course, are one of the OGs and the original Hospitable Hosts, so it's a pleasure to be in the company. So.
Thank you. So why don't you introduce yourself, where your business is in the world, and anything else you'd like to share?
Sure. So I live in South Florida, just a little bit north of Miami, and my business is primarily in the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, but we do also have some properties down in South Florida. It's primarily long-term rentals, though, in South Florida. We do have one short-term rental here, and then the rest are in the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. And yeah, we call it, Mountain to Sea Cabins and Cottages, because that's kind of what we like to offer. We have our mountain properties and we have our ocean properties, and we're looking to expand on that brand as we grow our portfolio.
Why did you get involved in the Hospitable Hosts project, and how does it feel, writing your own chapter?
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, the reason I joined it really was because of I think the community that it offers you access to. People like yourself and the other authors in both books. I mean, there's some real powerhouses, real successful, giants in the industry in these books. There's people like myself kind of in the middle, and there's people starting out as well that are all a part of this, and everybody has a very similar reason for why they get into short-term rentals for the most part, but everybody has a very unique journey. And it's really cool to learn and see, how other people have gotten to their point of financial or time freedom through short-term rentals. That was my goal in getting into the short-term rental game, and I've achieved that, thankfully. But yeah, it's really the community that the Hospitable Host offers. And I mean, writing the chapter was it was enjoyable. Honestly, the hardest part for me was really trimming it down. I wrote everything in 2 days, and it was more than double the allowed word count. So it took a lot of trimming and trying to scrape out pieces and still keep the story intact. So that was the most challenging part of it.
What word would you use to describe Hospitable Hosts? If you had to contain it down to one word, what word would it be?
Inspiring. And I think that's really the intent of the books, is to provide the readers with inspiration to start their own journey or continue their own journey. In fact, just earlier this week, I had somebody reach out to me that had picked up the book and read it and just sent me a note, just thanking me for giving them inspiration that day, that they could continue on and do something like that.
Talk us through the journey. How did you go from that first unit to the units that you're on now? And what were the kind of steps to success along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I was committed once I decided on short-term rentals, and even a step back from that, once I decided on real estate as my path to financial freedom. I started out with the goal of I wanted to replace my W-2 income, right, so that I could leave that job to get the financial and time freedom, which I think most people are looking for. And so I decided on real estate as my vehicle for being able to do that, and that's why I started out with short-term or long-term rentals. And it was just, it was just realizing that it was going to take a lot longer to achieve the goals that I was looking for. And by happenstance, I happened to come across another podcast that was talking about short-term rentals and the Smoky Mountains in particular. And it sounded too good to be true. So I Google mapped where it was, because I didn't even know where the Smoky Mountains were. And then I saw it was 17 hours or so away. It was a week before Thanksgiving, and we packed up a minivan full of 7 people and drove out there and checked out the area. And about 3 weeks later or so, we were under contract on our first cabin. And from that point, like I said, I was just committed and I knew I was going all in. So it was just a matter of finding the right deals, and I knew that I'd figure things out as I went.
What was the biggest challenge and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for me was it was really just a personal challenge that came about unexpectedly. And I mentioned it in the chapter there, but shortly after I'd gotten started, I think we had just bought the first cabin and we were under contract on the second and third and converting that one in Florida from a long-term rental into a short-term rental. So we had a lot going on, still very, very early in the short-term rental stage and learning things. And we kind of got hit with a pretty big medical issue with my wife. Long story short, she was in Ecuador and had to have a procedure that really went awry, and she got stuck there for about 6 months, unexpectedly, almost bedridden. And I was still working the W-2 at that time, of course, and we have 3 kids, including a 3-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 12-year-old. And so we kind of get hit with that out of left field. And in the midst of all that, everything else going on with growing the short-term rental business, and so it took a lot of grit to keep going through that. I think that's one of those things that can really be a showstopper if you don't have, like I mentioned before, if you don't really have a strong reason for why you're doing it. But I was, like I said, I was committed, and I knew that I couldn't stop. I saw the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of what we had started with the real estate, and I knew that it was going to be getting me to that goal. And so to stop at that point, frankly, for me, just wasn't an option. So from there, it's just, you figure it out, right? So we, leveraged family and friends, both in Ecuador and here in the US in different states. We sent our 2 older kids up north with my parents, to spend some time there. We brought in my father-in-law from Ecuador to here to help out with the 3-year-old, who was around 2 at the time. So we did everything we could, and thankfully, after 6 months or so, we were able to get my wife back here to the US. But it was still several surgeries that had to happen once she got back here, and so it's a very long process going through all that. But that was probably the hardest thing for me, trying to tackle those personal issues while trying to build a fledgling short-term rental business.
What would you say is the biggest wow moment or a perception that's changed since you originally started this business?
I think the biggest wow was just seeing how quickly I was able to achieve the financial goals that I had set out with. When I had started or come up with that, hey, real estate's how I'm going to get out of this W-2 world and set myself up for building generational wealth. It was a 5-year goal, and to me, that was like extremely aggressive. And like I said, it happened in less than 2 years. I mean, a lot less than 2 years, but I left the W-2 in about 2 years. And that just really blew me away at what was actually possible with this, and particularly with short-term rentals. I mean, when it comes to cash flow, like if that is what you're looking for, which most people are, if they're looking to leave their W-2 and replace that income, it's hard to beat the cash flow that you can get with short-term rentals. And I'd started out with the long terms, and it was small multifamily, and like I said, it was just going to be a lot of those units to get me where I wanted to be, and it was going to take a long time. And then I stumbled across the short-term rentals, and lo and behold, it blew those goals out of the water.
Thank you so much, Cale. And thanks. I look forward to seeing you at the next wealth conference or
yes,
online for the networking. So thanks again.
Absolutely.
Bye for now.
Having a blast, gonna get it on the Bruce Lee podcast. Bruce Lee like Bruce Lee, cause it's so hard and the T is loose leaf. Making up those rhymes, don't write it, just do it loosely.